JJ, hi.
Good morning.
We just discovered something in the walk downstairs that we have many things in common, but one thing, we're both, and our children are both, dual citizens, United States and Germany.
That's right.
Now, you recently, in your career, spent a decade in the States. I moved from California here 5 years ago. You were in the States 10 years, and then 7 years in Silicon Valley for some German car makers in Silicon Valley, but then of course for Apple. And that's going to become interesting because that already your vision was the self-driving car. But then 2 years ago, you switched from Silicon Valley, you came back to Wolfsburg to be Chief Digital Officer at VW. So you were JJ, and now you're Johann Jungwirth. Now tell me about innovation. We're going to talk about breakthroughs, but the role of culture, we're going to return to it at the end maybe. What was your culture shock?
So there were no real culture shocks, but I have to say, I mean, I knew of course what to expect, but I was shocked that in autonomy, like in self-driving vehicles, you know, in Germany, in Europe, we were in the deepest dream ever, you know, sleeping well, not really having this on our agenda. I mean, I looked at the European plans, I looked at, you know, the OEM plans. Urban driving in city areas was, you know, on these plans for 2028, 2030. That means it was just in some research department and not even the people in research really believed in it. And I was like, OMG, I mean, this is like crazy. I mean, I knew already, you know, 2 years ago where Google is, now Waymo, where Uber is, where Tesla is, Apple and so on. And I'm like, guys, this is 2020, not 2030. We need to hurry up. We need to start now, immediately, you know, with the serious development, with serious plans, and we need to have them in the market, you know, 2020, 2021. So this was one big topic where, you know, I felt we were so far behind. The other big topic is, I have to say, I also did not like some of the discussions we had this morning, kind of saying, you know, Silicon Valley, you know, forget about it, we shouldn't copy. I mean, you remember what Steve Jobs said? He said, good artists copy, great artists steal.
And can we capture that already? Let's get in the habit.
So, I mean...
Here's for plagiarism, so that was good artists copy, great artists steal. Steve Jobs.
Yes. And, I mean, looking at...
You're saying we should steal from Silicon Valley?
I mean, we shouldn't steal altogether. I'm not for that. So, you know, we should respect everyone's IP and so on. I would just quote Steve, and, you know, if you look at how carefully he looked at that time at the automotive industry, you know, his favorite cars were Porsches and Mercedes SLs at the time, and he switched them like every 3 to 6 months. And he actually looked carefully at German engineering, precision, perfection. I mean, if you look at, you know, devices from Apple today, I have my iPhone 10 here with me. I mean, amazing technology. I mean, you know, certain nanometers, you know, of gaps. I mean, precision anywhere you can look. And then combine that with Johnny Ives, you know, best in class user experience. And
Johnny Ives, the star designer,
yes.
The aesthetic vision of Apple. I mean, the elegance, the beauty of it.
It's the elegance, it's the beauty, but it's actually the combination of industrial design and human interface design. Really, I mean, if you think about, just a few years back, you know, we were all putting in our pins, right? I mean, we were entering our pins in order to unlock our smartphones. And then, you know, Apple came out with Touch ID, huge improvement. And you know, this customer obsession, you know, obsessing over the customer experience, and now with Face ID, I basically, you know, just look at my iPhone 10, it's unlocked, and here you go. So it means as you bring it up, you know, look at it, it's unlocked without doing anything.
Can we capture that maybe? Obsessing about the customer experience?
Yes.
That is not something German firms are known for? Obsessing about the customer experience is something worth stealing like a great artist. And the point you made about beauty and elegance picks up, echoes a point that was made earlier about eroticism, if you recall. So actually, human-centered, almost erotic, to not forget beauty and elegance, which is a human thing that we'll preserve as we go into the future with precision and some perhaps German virtues and engineering?
Yes, so a combination, and I have to say, in my opinion, we have in the long run, to partner with Silicon Valley partners. We have to partner with Chinese partners. We have to partner with, Israeli companies. The future is not about, just one entity being successful on its own. It's about, working with the right partners, building the right ecosystems. It's a connected world, in so many different ways. And I think we don't get that part yet. We think, we should look at Silicon Valley, we should, just do our own thing, focus on our own strength. I think we will completely fail if we think, that this is the way out, of where we are. And I have to say, in the long run, we need these partnerships, and we need to actually use their strength and actually combine our strengths with their strength. And I have to say, as I mentioned, Silicon Valley, one place to work with, to look at, but China and Israel, definitely the other two places.
We're going to get there. Somebody wrote customer experience is central. That's not the same thing as obsessing about the customer experience. Steve Jobs, I covered him as a journalist in Silicon Valley. Obsession is the key.
Yeah,
it makes you an unpleasant person. But
it should be obsess over the customer experience.
Yes. Now let's move on. We worked out a rough structure. We want a point of your life calling is this revolution that you've said will exceed the one that happened over a century ago from horse to car. It is now from car to self-driving car. And we're going to look at that. We want to get into your brain and how you view that from 3 points of view. Let's first talk about the human point of view, the humanism of the human-centric point of view. Then we'll move on to governments and countries, and then, of course, firms, businesses, industries. But tell us why this is, in my opinion, the hugest deal of the whole digital revolution. Let's start with matters of life and death.
Yes. So the whole topic is, I already said human first. For me, this is human thinking. So really taking kind of design thinking to the next level. I call this human thinking. You could also take, customer experience, user experience to the next level. Call it human experience. And if you put the human in the center, then you actually focus on these things. Like, is it the right thing to do? Is it actually improving our life? Is it actually beautiful? Does it show that we care? Is it emotional? Does it show the empathy? Does it actually bring us forward as a society? Does it improve people's life? And actually, does it preserve our planet? All of this together. And if you put these questions out there, you forget about the technology. It's about, how can I save these 1.25 million traffic deaths and these additional 5 million, people getting injured every year in traffic? If you think about, just look at the ratio.
Is that more than die from any other disease like cancer? Is that the leading cause of death worldwide?
It's definitely, if you look at traffic and look at, mobility and transport as a whole, it's the furthest highest up, compared to planes,
it's a
to trains,
number.
to, anything else. So if you think about these numbers, we get used to these, because they are small numbers at a time. If you add this all up and you look at the number of A320s, crashing every single week, actually, we would shut down air traffic right away if these numbers would be in air traffic.
And just to spell it out, your optimism, we're going to save 1 billion lives plus a year, because this is, we said, some things humans will always be better at, some things machines will get better at. Driving is clearly something that machines will be better at.
Machines will be better at already in the first generation, 10 times better than us humans, then 100 times better, then 1,000 times better, and it's unstoppable. It is, and we know all of this is possible, because of a combination of actually kind of CPU, GPU, deep learning neural network chipsets being available at amazingly high performance because of the cloud and all the exponential technologies and AI and so on in the cloud, because of sensing. Look at the radar technology, laser technology, also cameras resolutions and all of this combined. And clearly without AI we wouldn't get there. But I mean, coming back to the human side, I mean, there are so many more factors. The number one is, of course, safety. I mean, number two, think about, getting 38,000 hours in your lifetime, which you spend in your vehicles, or which we spend in our vehicles, to just be able to do anything, read, play, play with your children, play games, look, finally see the mountains as you drive by.
As we were riding up in the gondola together,
Yeah.
he said, this is what Cedric, the self-driving car that VW is developing, this is what it feels like to sit in Cedric. We were just talking with each other, making a movie, you know?
I mean,
you will make a movie, you will watch a movie, you will sleep, you will prepare, you will do whatever you want.
I mean, we have that experience already today. Maybe some of you have chauffeurs and you get driven and you don't have to drive, then you already have that. It's that same chauffeur experience, just without the human in the driver's seat. We have it in planes, we have it in trains, we have it in public transportation, but we don't have it in individual mobility, in this cocooning space, which is mine. And if you think about the interior, I mean, the interior of these vehicles will become, as important as the exterior today. So they will become your living room, your gaming room, your wellness room, your fitness room, your kitchen, your anything you want it to be, your bedroom, your lounge. I mean, this is revolutionizing the automotive industry. This is creating, something which has not been out there before. And I can tell you, my opinion is the automotive industry is the place to be in, to work in. And there are so many people, independent of whether they are in legal or in finance or in other, areas of whatever skills they have, coming into automotive, and you see it with all the startups and tech companies and everyone in China and so on getting into the space.
We're still, just for one more moment, looking at it from a human point of view, and we were chatting about it a bit earlier. When cars replaced horses, there were a lot of people worrying about what's going to happen to horses. By the way, I once looked it up for an article. There are more horses today than there were in 1900, and if you were a horse, you'd much prefer to live today. But what people were interested in is always the wrong thing. Nobody was interested that the car would make possible suburbs, Walmart, entire business, like ways of living. What is this revolution going to do to our cities and our ways of living?
Yeah. I mean,
what will our cities look like?
Our imagination is not big enough actually to capture what this will do to society and to cities. I mean, for city planners, if you think about all the parking spaces, all the parking garages, everything we have out there, I mean, we see a reduction in parking spaces required, down to 50+% potentially. So you could use that space, to build parks, to build children's playgrounds, to build museums, theaters, anything we think we need, and make cities actually a better place.
But explain to us why we will not need parking spaces anymore. Why is that?
Yes. So looking at all the simulation we have done and modeling we have done, we actually think if a city would switch over completely, from ownership to self-driving, shared vehicles, you only need about 1/7 of the current population. So if you think about that shrinking down to about 1/7, that's massive, and that actually explains that. In addition, we don't need, even for those, let's say, 1/7 total population of vehicles, these parking spaces in the city centers, in the city core. If someone knows Wolfsburg and the Autostadt, think about those towers, those two towers. We can build such towers a little bit outside the city cores, where on the ground floor, fully robotic with KUKA automation, equipped cleaning inside, outside, even repairs, small repairs and things like that. And then they can actually move up into the tower, from 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. to be charged and to park there. But the usage of these vehicles will go up from currently 4% to about 40% and then even higher. I mean, in addition, I would actually want to also point out one more human topic.
What was the usage currently?
It's 4%.
4%. That means 96% of these metal boxes are
sitting,
wasted.
and they
hanging around.
And they are occupying 4 parking lots throughout the daytime and nighttime. And if you think about one more, I just want to point out one more human topic, which is so close to my heart, is that finally we can give individual mobility, to the blind, to the sick, to the elderly, to the children. So many people around the world, hundreds of millions which don't have access to individual mobility, or people which cannot afford it, which will be able to afford it in the future, and they will have it from door to door.
This is, to me, such cause for optimism. Often we're pessimistic about things, and yet we're moving on to switch point of view to how to, from the point of view of countries and governments and regulators, and yet there are critics, there are skeptics, there are people who don't get this, there are people who worry mainly, as in the previous revolution, what's going to happen to the horse and buggy drivers, what's going to happen to the taxi drivers, what's going to happen to this and this and this. I find that small-minded and petty, but they're there. Then we have the insurance industry, we have all sorts of liability. Tell us, from the point of view of countries, government, what's a great way to sleep through this revolution or to get this disastrously wrong, and what's a way to get this right?
So most importantly is, in my opinion, if you do what's right for the human, for the cities, for society, for the planet, then that's the first, right decision. And then if you think about, you mentioned regulation. I do think, of course, we need to show that the technology is safe. We need to document that, these vehicles, will save out of the 91% of all these, accidents, being caused by us humans, that, if you take a factor of 10, then only about 9% max, could be caused in the future. I think we will get down further, but we know at least 81.4% out of the 91% caused by humans, they will go away for sure. Because these cars, they don't drink and drive, they don't fall asleep, they don't run red lights, they don't speed, they don't have this limited field of view with 2 eyes only. They have, 20 eyes, and they look around at all times, at night and at day. They don't, have a 1 second reaction time until they brake. They brake in milliseconds or microseconds, and so on. So regulation needs to, of course, wait and look and make sure that the system, the self-driving system, is ready. And that's, of course, number one. But then we are, and there are, the first self-driving laws being prepared now, like the US is pushing this really, really extensively. It already passed the House, in Congress a few months ago in the summertime. It's now in the Senate. I do expect that, if everything runs well, to pass the Senate by middle of next year. And if that's happening, every OEM, actually every brand, can apply for an exemption and then actually deploy self-driving vehicles.
Exemption from what?
To be able to deploy self-driving vehicles without steering wheel and pedals of up to 100,000. And 100,000 is a good start. That's where I see the US pushing very hard. And if that process takes another 12 months, think about 2019, 2020, the US, starting in this.
The US has an advantage that Germany and Switzerland also have. They're federal. We were talking about this experiment in Arizona right now. Maybe that's an advantage, but could we maybe formulate a rule or a thesis for regulators? What's an enlightened approach for regulators to take?
Yeah. Approve self-driving laws to make sure that we can bring these vehicles to markets in latest 2021, also in Europe. I'm really concerned about Europe. I see the US running, as I said. I see, Middle Eastern countries, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Dubai, Singapore, Asia, and so on. China will follow right away. And right now, if I look at Europe, we have, a Vienna Convention, we have a Geneva Convention, we have, UN ECE, regulation, which now we are working on. It was, just changed for level 3 automation, but which is still requiring the human driver to actually basically take over when the system asks you to, and not going from door to door, from A to B. And now, for level 4, level 5, which is the, full autonomy, full automation, and then full autonomy, that needs to be done. Right now, it looks like potentially 2022, 2023, that can be done, but we need it sooner.
Now, let me ask you, a contact at HERE, the navigation company, recently told me that China's going to run away with this, and Germany will be left behind because of Germans being Germans, seeing problems before they see opportunities, being paranoid about data privacy, being paranoid about all sorts of things, whereas the Chinese, who don't have this democracy to worry about, will build parallel highways to demonstrate the success of these cars. Does it matter even for firms, for humans? Does it matter if one place, China, Arizona, Singapore, Israel, runs away with it, gets to the future faster than the rest of us? Does that help the firms over there? Does that hurt the firms here? Does it matter at all?
It matters massively. It matters massively. Number one, I just want to point out to your comment about infrastructure. We are building the self-driving system to not require any infrastructure changes. No streets, no roads, no traffic lights, not even, the network coverage, 4G, 5G. We don't need that for self-driving vehicles. So we built the system in a way that it can drive like we humans drive. Even in Black Forest without coverage, even up here somewhere if there are some roads where we could drive in the mountains. So that's really, really key. Of course, as they come back into their, parks or into these towers, they should have connectivity there to be able to be updated, to get the latest and greatest maps and all that. So that's number one. Number two, this is a war city by city by city by city. I do believe, a number one company and number one, let's say, fleet operator, and I will talk a little bit about the value chain as well and value drivers. Whoever is first, let's say, in a city with a large fleet of mobility as a service vehicles, which are these self-driving electric vehicles, has a huge advantage. And I think if you are coming later than, let's say, 6 to 12 months into a city, you are already, at such a distance behind. It's maybe not the winner takes it all, but the winner takes most. So that's why city for city for city, we need to be really, really fast and be, let's say, within the first 6 to 12 months.
So this is interesting. This is a message to mayors. If you're an enlightened mayor listening, paying attention, watching this video, get enlightened. Be first. You're saying this is a first mover advantage. Revolution, not a last mover advantage revolution.
Yes, the one side is the mayor, the other side is, the people who are in this value network, from the self-driving system provider to the automotive OEM, developing, designing, building the cars, to the fleet operator running the fleet, in these cities, to the mobility provider having, the customer offering, the customer interface, the customer data and credit card, and whatever payment methods, and then the content provider for all, digital content, physical content, all kinds of services. If you think about entertainment, education, productivity, all the way to advertisement platforms. We need massive advertisement platforms. And so, there will be companies, which will specialize on some of these value layers. And there are other companies like us which try to cover all 5 layers in as many cities and regions as we can. And in some regions we might have to focus on 1 or 2 because there are others, like for example Didi in China, which occupies, and is basically the monopoly, for mobility providing in China. But the level, the field is open. Massive competition on all 5 of these value drivers, value layers, and profit pools, but there is enough, let's say, profit value in these profit pools. There will be so many winners in this game, but there will be even more so, companies which will struggle.
That's a perfect segue. We've talked about the human point of view, and we'll bring it up again. We've talked about the government point of view, or regulators and lobbies, and we'll come up again. But let's switch to the business side and the industry side. For OEMs, software, for various ecosystems, for industries, this is disruption. Now, explain to us the new business model, including MaaS, software as a service. Explain to us the disruption. From what are we going to what? From the business side.
Yeah, so looking at these 5, value layers, these, you could sum up in, call it mobility as a service. So mobility for all at the push of a button, this is what we call it. I always have my little one button with me, and this is actually bringing me back to the beginning, talking about best-in-class user experience, about obsessing over the customer experiences. Part of our design thinking, of our human thinking process, we went out on the street to Berlin. We talked to about 40 people, and we came up with 7, customer, personas, so to speak, and we found 7 people representing these personas. And one was actually an 82-year-old lady who said, yeah, I don't have a smartphone, I don't want one, I come from an age, where the enemy listens, and so I don't want that. So we thought hard, our team in our future center in Potsdam, how can we help this lady? If you don't have an app, to call, your Cedric, your self-driving car, your mobility as a service vehicle, if you don't have your digital assistant, Alexa at home, we need a solution. And the team came up with this one button, very, very simple. I mean, you have connectivity in here, latest and greatest 5G technology, love that. You have a compass, you have GPS, you have everything you need in order to, when you push this button, and it doesn't have more than this one button, you just push it, and then this LED ring, there are about 30 LEDs, multicolor LEDs in here. Then you see like a search going on, like the LEDs rotating as it's searching for the next available vehicle. When it finds it, it switches to a 0 to 100% level. So you see the car actually approaching you as it gets closer. You see about where it is. And when the ring is 100% filled, oh, it's here, outside the door, right next to the ice cube. And then it's switching into a compass mode. You hold it like that, and actually just one LED is on at a time, and you can, as you rotate it, you see always at which entrance of the building it's actually standing and waiting for you. For the blinds, we are integrating vibration signals so that the blinds actually get like proximity sensing and different kind of tones or vibration as they get closer and as they walk into the right or wrong direction. And this is genius, in my opinion.
It's not only genius, you know what it reminds me of? And it shows what influenced you. I remember covering the several press conferences by Steve Jobs, the original iPod, and then again the iPhone, where he always made fun of Microsoft and other TV remote controls with many buttons. Yeah. And then everyone in the hall was always breaking out in laughter when he revealed his option. And of course, the iPod, the iPhone, it always had how many buttons? One. It was that ease of use, it was that simplicity, it was that obsessing about the customer. He reduced it to one button. It was an authoritarian vision. You have one button, we've sorted it all out. That's what that is.
Yes, and we have this also, not just in black, but also in gold and silver. And I'm still working on the rose
like
gold.
The iPods. Now, okay, so you went, we just compared your button there to Steve Jobs, which is flattering. But I just want to throw something else at you. You described how this revolution is in that sense part of a bigger revolution from owning things to renting things and sharing things, which is happening for bikes, washing machines, absolutely everything, Airbnb, apartments, we're sharing everything, better capacity utilization. But I want to now bring up your employer VW and your previous employer Apple and also Tesla and Waymo and all the others. And I of course remember the computer industry, this is a bit corny, but 70s, 80s, 90s, what happened is all the power was with IBM. Then the power shifted to 2 platforms, the Intel inside, and of course Microsoft, the operating system, and IBM had a crisis. Now, I want to challenge you a bit, because we said the word is disruption. I think if you ask anybody in this industry, especially outside of Germany, even in Germany, the analogy today would be VW is IBM, Daimler is IBM, and the Intel inside and the Microsoft are outside of Germany.
So, one of the reasons, of course, why I'm back here in Germany, I know we're in Austria now, but back in Germany, working on this, I should say just back in Europe, is that I do believe that we have a clear opportunity, a clear chance to actually make this happen and transition, a company like the Volkswagen Group with our 12 brands and awesome products, awesome companies, great talents to, build what we did in hardware. Over 70 to 100 years, we learned how to build the best-in-class hardware in automotive, with perfection, which even Steve copied, precision, focus on, beauty and design, looking at aesthetics, looking at, durability, looking at high quality, looking at longevity, and so on. And then, combine this now with what I believe we need to do is do the same in software, which includes, software design, user experience. Do the same in services, which includes the cloud and data and analytics and machine learning and deep learning and, all these, you could call them exponential technologies, and do the same, focus on these two things. And we need to become, and I think many of us in this room, in our respective industries, we need to become perfectly vertically integrated hardware, software, and services company.
We need to become perfectly vertically integrated. Sounds like late 19th century Carnegie, Rockefeller. We've done that before. But now I want to be a bit unpleasant, and we'll get to questions. But I want to be a bit unpleasant because you've made me so optimistic about the human point of view. This is going to be a great world for my kids, for our kids to live in, and they're going to be safer and happier. And I'm kind of pessimistic about regulation in Europe and Germany because you were too. You said that. And I'm pessimistic that we might miss out. And I'm really pessimistic, unless you now tell me something I haven't heard yet, that the German car makers, the largest industry in terms of employment in the country, will make it. I haven't heard anything yet. How are you going to vertically integrate? How are you going? Now this is where everything comes together. We started with culture shock. Okay, is it Silicon Valley? Is it Germany? If the regulator doesn't play a game, if the voters and the public don't play along, and if the software expertise is elsewhere, and if the value shifts from the equivalent of IBM to Microsoft, why will they will just be shells, the German company, for software and chips and technology built and invented and tried out elsewhere? Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, so let's look at all three axes of disruption. I mean, everyone in the room knows them, from combustion engine to electric drive, from human driving to self-driving vehicles, from ownership to shared mobility. And this is what we are in. I mean, each of these cost multi-billions. I mean, we just communicated this year our Roadmap E at IAA, Matthias Müller on stage, saying clearly, until 2025, with all of our brand power, we will roll out 50 battery electric vehicles, another 30, plug-in hybrid vehicles, so 80 electric models across all brands. We're investing 20 billion. If you think about these three axes of disruption, the first axis, 20 billion commitment investment. In addition, about 50 billion in purchasing power, for batteries, building 4 or 5 gigafactories, and so on with our partners. Now, I do believe, that we have not just a fair chance, we are doing this. This is a massive, let's say, switch in direction, and the right thing to do, for the humans again. Make the cities clean, make the cities quiet, make the cities, without any smells, from emissions or so. Give the people, this acceleration, they have, the fun to drive with electric drive. Give the people, the low total cost of ownership because, an electric motor doesn't break down. It doesn't have 1,000, moving parts and oil changes and all that stuff. All of these things together. So. And then looking at number 2 and 3, that's what I'm focusing on mainly, in addition to the digital ecosystem and platforms, and about 50% of this first axis is also software and services, with having custom IDs, building these platforms. And that's what I'm focusing on, multi-billion investment in these two. And I have to say, I wouldn't work for the Volkswagen Group if I wouldn't believe that we actually can do this and will do this. And my clear goal is in 2021 have the first products, like the Cedric Urban Pod, like a Cedric Urban Shuttle, like a Cedric delivery van, on the roads in the first 2 to 5 cities. And then it's about how can you scale, massively, exponentially to 50 cities, 500 cities, 5,000 cities, and be in this race with everyone else. And to be clear, I am extremely confident, and I do also think we cannot do it alone. That's why we need partners, especially in the software and services segments, work and be part of the right ecosystems. So I am.
We need to be part of the right ecosystems, and to be a good player in the ecosystem. So we need to be part of the right ecosystem. Alex from Daimler, another OEM, another IBM.
And we disagree on many points, but that's okay. Alex and I know each other from
How are you facing
15
failure,
years, and we like each other.
failure?
So you
Love it.
mentioned Daimler and IBM, Microsoft, and that was very interesting because if you look at the Silicon Valley now, we have the Frightful Five or the Big Five, and they are morphing into monopolies now. So I would say the current IBM is Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft stays that it is. It's fascinating. So we have, but they are not under pressure. They are an Apple too. They are bathing into money, every morning. So their pressure is low. Yeah? So what we have known as car industry in Germany, our pressure is high. So I would say in one thing the field is leveled now, is about to be leveled, because now they got their regulation. Cyberspace is dead. The unregulated cyberspace is dead. I had that as a headline in the news lately. And since we are under pressure now, and we are, I would say, as you look at Daimler, we are moving fast. I made a photo from Daimler.
I love that you turned it around.
No,
we're
stop
under
it.
pressure. We're behind. That's a virtue. That's great. That's why
It's a
we
virtue.
win.
And I give you another example. Just take a photo from the plant in Untertürkheim from Daimler, and then this is a kind of a chaos. And then took a photo from the new plant Apple, the Ring. That's like the ring. You say
The
it's
infinite
totally,
loop.
it's totally dead. It's a perfect form. Perfect means you can cancel it out and it's vanished. So what I would say, and I know everybody loves Apple, but what I will say, what the new form of industry is not invented yet. And we are about to invent a new form of industry, but it's not Silicon Valley, because these monopolies there, they are buying all their competitors because they have money. Facebook has they do it. This is more, I would say we have the pressure first, and therefore we are more agile now.
Even though I would disagree with you, Alex, but we don't go into this now.
Do you want to bundle a couple? Where is the microphone?
I actually just have one more, maybe I can bridge the time quickly, where I do think we have a huge issue as Europe, as Germany, is looking at the new technologies. I just take one example, in addition to AI, where I look at China, they are introducing now machine learning AI classes in basic school, in elementary school, in middle school, in high school. I mean, where is this in Germany? Where is it in Europe? You have to look at quantum computing. I mean, quantum computing, it's Microsoft, IBM, and Google. Google is certainly number one in this space. And if you look at, the developers community, the research, the community working on this, it's actually Germans and Austrians and Switzerland and whatever, people from Europe, which don't have a chance to work on this topic in Europe because it's not really funded well. I know there were some discussions and so on. EU now is trying, but I mean, you look at China, they invest now and they put aside $500 million to invest in quantum computing. They built buildings for 6,000 people, even though they just have like a handful or two available. I mean, it's just like a strategic approach, having a 5-year plan, a 20-year plan. I really like the comment from this morning. I mean, yes, we need to have the vision, we need to have the right purpose first, but then we need to build concrete plans, and we need to see these things as strategic, like AI, like quantum, not just quantum computing, it's then quantum AI, it's quantum internet, quantum communication. I mean, it's massive what's around the corner.
Thank you very much. First, I think VW is one of Germany's most powerful brands, and with great products and amazing people. And I liked the smile on your face when you show your iPhone and you talk about the Silicon Valley and new technologies and new opportunities and the purpose and the vision. But critically said, I also know the situation in Wolfsburg. And it's a situation that is very much influenced by insecurity, by people being afraid of what's happening. It's not everything. The Innovation Center in Potsdam is not reflected of the city. And you talk a lot about the human and bringing the human further and, amplifying design thinking. So what is your opinion on the human role, and how do you, in your digital strategy, approach this very human transformation process at the root? And where do you see this collective narrative of Wolfsburg going and connected to those things that are so ambitious and positive?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and actually we asked the same question ourselves, from the start when I started 2 years ago, and we established city relationships, MOUs, collaboration, partnerships with Hamburg, with Dresden, with Wolfsburg. We call it Wolfsburg Digital, so Wolfsburg Digital. And it's a close collaboration. The MOU was signed, with Matthias Müller, Karl-Heinz Blessing, Bernd Osterloh, and of course City Mayor and Klaus Morse and the Lower Saxony. Olaf Lies actually was there, and with a 10 pillars where we look at how can we improve life of the citizens in Wolfsburg. Even looking at digital stuff like how can I offer the right digital services to the citizens. That they don't have to go to the Rathaus, to get something done and so on. Of course, if you look at those 10 pillars, 5 of them are with the city, and the city owns them, including, having a CDO, a chief digital officer as a city, having, a digital strategy and so on. So we help the city. I have to say, it's in my opinion, if I look at overall Germany, the most comprehensive kind of digital plan and strategy which a city and a company have. And you can look it up, just search for the MOU, Wolfsburg Digital. You can actually read it and look at the topic areas. It's a positive example, but of course now we need to fill it with life. There's a lot of work, but we have a clear purpose. We have a quite clear vision of where we want to be in 2020, leading, with partners like Vodafone, building our 5G network, setting up, at that time, then in the 10-year time frame, already cells for 6G testing. We know every 10 years. We have a new generation Wi-Fi for free, glass, fiber, and so on to every household, and so on, including, of course, electric mobility charging stations. So we do as much as we can, and I have to say it's a close collaboration, and in my opinion, it's also there a human-first approach, but it's a long road.
JJ, that was a breakneck gallop through a revolution that'll make it better to be a human being. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.